Okay, in this lesson we'll be talking about the real number system. Real number. Okay. Now talking about real number system. Now when we talk about real number system, in mathematics, numbers are generally grouped into real numbers and complex numbers. Real numbers and complex numbers. Okay. So but at this level we'll be focusing on real numbers. But let's just have a peep into complex numbers. When we're referring to complex numbers, we're talking about mainly imaginary numbers, okay? Numbers that don't exist in the real plane. For example, when we have a square root of 4, square root of 4 is usually plus 2 or minus 2. But what if we have something like square root of minus 4? Now, talking about square root of minus 4, it cannot be plus 2, neither can it be minus 2. What do we do? Okay, in the complex plane, we can write it as 2i. Okay, so what does this 2i mean? Okay, it means square root of minus 4 is actually square root of 4 times minus 1. Okay, which is equal to square root of 4 times square root of minus 1. Now, when we talk about square root of 4 here, we'll be having plus or minus 2. And the square root of minus 1 here, we'll be having I. So, looking at it, we can say that square root of minus 4 is equal to plus 2i or minus 2i. Okay, so where I is always the square root of minus 1, that means I times another I is equal to minus 1. Okay, but we'll go into details of that in subsequent classes or in further maths. Okay, so we'll be focusing on only real numbers. Now, talking about real numbers, when we have real numbers, now these real numbers, we can group them into rational, and non-rational. Okay, so we can have rational and non-rational. So when we talk about rational numbers, what are rational numbers? These are all the numbers that we can express as exact fractions. Okay, so if we have a number like a whole number like 2, we can write it as 2 over 1. If you have a fraction like 3 quarters, you can write it as 3 over 4. If you have a decimal like 0.5, okay, then if you have a negative integer like minus 4, all these are rational numbers. Even if you have counting or natural numbers like 3, 5, and the rest, all of them appear as rational numbers because we can express them as exact fractions. But when we're dealing with non-rational, sometimes referred to as irrational numbers. Now, irrational numbers, we are referring to numbers that we cannot write exactly as a fraction. Then we can't write them as exact fractions. Example, we're talking about pi, okay, which is approximately 3.14159 and so on, okay. Then we're also talking about root 2, which is approximately plus or minus 1.41428 and so on. Okay, so these values, we can't express them as exact fractions and they don't have exact values. That's why we refer to them as non-rational numbers. Okay, now focusing on rational numbers. when we talk about rational numbers, these rational numbers